Welcome to Serious Talk, the Military Minute. I'm your host, Greg Banks. We're all about helping veterans, active service members, and military spouses find their place in the Salesforce ecosystem through real success stories and practical resources. Grab your coffee and let's talk about how your military experience can be your secret weapon in the tech world. Well, hello, Ryan Wagner. Welcome to the Military Minute. It's great to have you on the show today. I would love if you would start the day with us, if you would give us a little background on your time in the military, what led you there, ultimately when you decided that was not going to be a career choice for you. Just get us off the blocks here a little bit with your background.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. Excited to be here and get to talk to my old boss again in this podcast format. So originally getting into the military, both my parents were military. They were enlisted in the Navy, and I was going to try to enlist straight out of high school. My dad said he would disown me if I wanted to. So he made me go be an officer. So I went to Norwich University, which is a small military college up in Vermont, for 4 years, graduated there, and then I shifted into the Army. So they were both Navy, so they're trying to push me to go Navy, but I wanted to join the Army. So they were a little irritated with that, but my dad eventually accepted because it was the officer route. So ended up joining the Army. They sent me immediately down to Fort Lee, which is the training center for your basic officers leadership course, and I was in logistics. So I was doing everything quartermaster related, so doing anything with supply, fuel, and ammunition. And then from there, they sent me down to Fort Stewart, which is down in Georgia. You know the area very well. So I was down at Fort Stewart, and then they eventually shifted me up to Hunt Army Airfield, which is about an hour north of there, which is actually the better duty station because it's right in downtown Savannah, because they were deploying soon. And by deploying, doing Europe rotation, but they needed more young bucks that they can order around. So they sent me up there to be a movement officer in about 2020. I was up at Hunt Army Airfield. We did a port deployment over to Germany and Greece, spent about 6 months over there. This was all while I was single and able to have fun while I was young. So I had a great time over in Europe for about 9 to 10 months. But COVID happened about 3/4 of the way through. So we were totally locked down, couldn't do anything. Had to deal with all the port movements back during the middle of COVID, which was a lot of craziness that I could tell you about on another time if we had more time. But they sent us back in 2022. And then I met my wife, and she was working full time at a place called Cycle Bar at the time. She was doing her master's program and also teaching at the same time. So she's a very busy person, but kind of as our relationship progressed, she wanted to shift and do anesthesia. So of course I supported her in that. And when she did that, she had 2 more years of schooling in Savannah. I would have to go to officer's course again, which was captain's careers course, which I didn't want to do because I would have to be dislocated from her. And I did the analysis and said, hey, she's going to be making a lot more money than me. I could be a stay-at-home dad even if I wanted to once she's graduated. So I think it's time to get out and do something different. So I did a little bit over my service obligation. I did 5.5 years just to better, mark out my timeline as I refined things and worked on things for a smooth transition. So I ended up doing about 5.5 years, nothing but great experiences with the Army. And, you don't get lucky twice in the Army. So I knew after I was in downtown Savannah for 4 years, they were probably going to send me somewhere worse. So didn't want to deal with that. So pulled the trigger and decided to get out. But yeah, that's kind of the background there.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I guess when you hear about people enlisting, you kind of hear that typical 4 years, 4 and out, or re-up, and people re-up for 2, re-up for 4, or whatever. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say kind of I just did beyond my 4 and then had the option to get out. Did you not have to re-up officially at 4, or was it just on a time because of the job?
So it's a little bit different as an officer where there is no mandatory service obligation outside of your contract. So if you do 4 years because they pay for college, your obligation is 4 years. But then the Army just assumes you're going to stay in because you're an officer. So there's no mandatory sign up after that. So me being the salesperson I am, I made a deal with my brigade commander because there was another upcoming deployment. I said, hey, I will get you guys over to Germany and help you out with everything along the way if you give me the last 6 months to focus on my transition. So that's why I stayed longer than I needed to be able to help out the unit and then in turn be able to give myself a little bit more time to get out. So it ended up being a win-win both for my commander and for myself.
When you're negotiating on your own behalf, right?
Right, exactly.
Good deal. All right. Well, Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a number of veterans, and inevitably, one way or the other, everybody's going to choose to get out. Either they retire or whatever. I know it's never an easy decision, but the hardest is making it. And once you make it, right, that opens a broad new world of horizons. So when you made that decision, you're making big life plans. You've got this girl who obviously your life's starting to revolve around, and you're making decisions based on that relationship. How did you kind of look at the horizon and start breaking down into options and paths and programs to participate in that would help you? Tell me a little bit about how you chose that, or and did you pick one path, or did you put 10 irons in the fire and said, we'll see which one comes along fastest or which one looked best? Like, how did you weigh those things out?
Yeah, I would say, making those sort of decisions is just like I like to fish every weekend. You put a line in the water and you see if something bites. So the more lines you have in the water, the more chances of success, right? So what it really started out with was being really connected with my community, other peer officers who were transitioning, to ask them those general questions of how did your transition go? Like, what did you feel like you did well? What did you want to do better? And not like interviewing them, just through natural conversation, right? But that really helped me to learn them, like from them, what their experience was, how they wish they could do it better. And then also, I did start putting those things in place through my community. So I'd be talking with other officers who are in my peer group and saying, I'm planning to transition now. Like, what advice would you give me? And everybody always wants to help you in a community. So everybody was always very helpful with me. We know, like, hey, your networking is the most important thing you do before you get out. So make sure you take advantage of that. And then everybody would always send you a ton of resources and assistance to be able to help you along the path. So, like they say, it takes a village to raise a kid. It's the same thing when you're getting out of the army. The community is always there to help you. So that was always very useful. Yeah.
The comparison, but like kind of like getting out of prison, you haven't been allowed to make free decisions in a while. Like you had orders that in some ways kind of keep you from having to have this wide spectrum of things to entertain, right? That you've got 8 choices, that's all that's open to you. So that narrows it down. So it makes it a little bit easier and not diminishing the weight of decisions veterans make when you're serving. But all right. And so as you began to do that, reflecting back now, right? I know when you're in the middle of that, it's just like another mission. It's another, this is what's in front of me. And you guys are programmed to evaluate, analyze, and make decisions. But tell me about maybe a skill or something that you learned when you were still in, maybe this wasn't even about separating, but looking back now, were there things that you were doing when the military that you have found in civilian life that have just really been tools that were good for your career?
Yeah, I would say like part of that I learned from the military is doing those large scale logistical movements, getting 3,000 pieces of equipment from the port of Savannah over to Germany and then Italy and then all over the place, right? Is daunting when you take it all into consideration, right? The cost, the timeline, the project management of it is daunting. So what you do is you break it down. And that's exactly what I did with my civilian transition is I learned to break it down. I need to have a high level idea of this is what I want to happen and these are my milestones, but I need to be okay with changes because no plan survives first contact, right? So what that looked like for me is having multiple career routes. It was first breaking down, okay, what are my skill sets? My skill sets is leadership, project management. And what I found is that I wanted to get into tech, and something that I was really lacking was technical expertise. Because although I have all these great soft skills, I had no hard skills. And that's what kind of opened the door with Salesforce for me. And learning about the Hiring Our Heroes Fellowship was learning those more technical skills. And I had a really tight timeline to make, so it was a little bit more stressful than anything else. But learning those hard skills that would carry me through, along with the soft skills that I had. And I found that was very useful to be able to take it day by day and kind of think of the high level in the background, but don't overwhelm yourself about thinking about, I need to feed my family in 6 months. Otherwise, we're going to lose the house or whatever. It's no, like next I have to get this certification. I need to talk to this person. I need to send this email, and just taking it day by day and adjusting as you go is what I found was very useful.
Yeah, that's a very tactical job. And like, it's just like kind of working down a list of things, and it might be open in terms of how many hurdles are in front of you, but that's the job, right? As you did that job, how many opportunities did you have to look beyond that? Did it open doors for you? Did it make connections with you with other people? Again, I think being in leadership probably a little different experience than the boots on the ground, so to speak. But Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when I was transitioning, I was working with the Port of Savannah a lot because I was sending stuff from here over to Europe and working with all the paperwork with them. So they were familiar with me. So I was actually, that was an additional line I was pursuing, was the managerial route through the Port of Savannah, was another thing I had on the back burner in case the whole tech thing didn't work out. So just like I was saying earlier, is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I had multiple routes open where I was looking at project management with logistics. I was looking at the port, and then I was also looking at tech with Salesforce. So if at any point the Salesforce one, fell through, I could follow up on my alternative opportunity. So that's kind of, networking with the Port of Savannah, letting them know what my timeline was, interviewing with them beforehand, and a couple other private companies such as Maersk helped me like calm those anxieties I had of what if this whole Salesforce thing doesn't work, because
Right.
you're taking a huge leap of faith in putting yourself out there, because at that time I had no Salesforce expertise. I got my admin certification, which was great, so I could at least show that I could learn technically what I needed, but it was an industry I was never familiar with.
Right.
So like, you're really putting yourself out there. So in order to like, because any company or any fellowship, they can't guarantee you a job. So it doesn't help for me to be spamming you guys or, Stephanie, who runs the Hiring Our Heroes program, saying like, hey, can you help me like figure this out? Like, I'm getting really anxious about my transition. It's no, what alternatives can I put in place to make sure that if something the worst does happen, I have backup. So that's kind of how I dealt with that internal worry as I was getting closer and closer to the transition timeline.
Good deal. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned hiring our heroes. You also talked about having multiple lines in the water. Were there any other? I mean, one of the things we're trying to do in this podcast, right, is get information out in front of veterans and military spouses, like who were just kind of behind you in this journey. They've not yet gotten there, but I've not come across one yet. I've got a friend right now who's 25 years active service, stepped out, was vice president of a company, and I reached out to him about possibly coming on here, and he goes, "Yeah, I just got let go today, so I'm a veteran looking again,
Right.
possibly reinventing himself." It again, all the confidence in the world to go do a mission, to do impossible things with no hesitation at all. But as you sit down, you start facing the civilian world, and you go, "All right, I've been diffusing bombs, I've been shipping tanks. There might be civilians that ship tanks, I don't know, but."
Right.
But as you look at that, just for anybody else that might be looking, I mean, obviously you mentioned hiring our heroes, but were there any other programs or events that you went to? Anything you want to call out, just as places that people might be looking into?
Yeah, a couple other ones are Veterati, so is where other veterans help other veterans. And so the thing is with the networking and doing the same thing on LinkedIn, I was doing cold outreach on LinkedIn, where I was looking with, companies that worked in the industry I wanted to work for, where they had veterans in their companies. So if I was interested in working there, I would just message that veteran and be like, hey, like
Right.
I am interested in potentially working for your company. Can you give me any experience or any pointers? And that would help with the networking piece. But another thing that I did was, I knew that the transition was going to be hard for me, because it wasn't just 5 years of military, it was 4 years of military college before that. So I was very used to structure. So another thing I took a serious look at was the reserves afterwards, and joining the reserve component, because part of what the reserves does is you can go on orders at any time. So let's say if I lost my job and things fell through on the tech side, I can go to my commander and say, hey, I need to get on orders to be able to feed my family, essentially. And they can find work for you to do. So that was another backup I had.
Okay.
And it helped me keep a little bit of structure in place of, okay, I'm going once a month to go play Army, or once every 3 months to go play Army. And it helped keep that structure in the background a little bit, so that it wasn't just like a total, whitewash change to the civilian side. I'm still somewhat connected to the military community there. And, a lot of it for me too with that decision was, I need to join a company that I know is going to be okay with me doing it, right?
Yeah.
Because even though it's 1 week in a month, it's still commitment. And they say, no company can ever discriminate against you being in the reserves, but it's very easy in the private sector to just say, hey, it was something else. As long as they don't
It was
explicitly say it
cutbacks.
because of the
Yeah.
reserves. Yeah, exactly. There's layoffs, right?
Right.
But part of that analysis was with, I have to join a company that is okay with that and it matches with their morals and values. And through the interview process and talking to you guys at Sirius, that's where I landed with that decision. Being able to feel comfortable to be able to pull the trigger on something like the reserves as well.
Yeah. again, I remember you coming on, and we've had conversations about the military and that transition period, career break for whatever reason. You're in an injury and can't work, and you come back, and man, the world feels like it passed you by.
Right.
And now I'm trying to sit in an interview or even send an application and justify why I've not been active in the civilian world for X number of years. Um,
Right.
but at any rate, it's we'll get into some more of those things as we go. That kind of opens our next question. Um, I don't begin to understand all the things you guys say. You particularly throw more acronyms at me than a lot of people do, but I know there's one could argue in the ecosystem of Salesforce. There's also kind of a jargon that you have to learn that vocabulary and understand some things around best practice. What we're really trying to do here is for those who are transitioning out, we want to give hope and ideas to people for any career they choose to know options that are out there, but in particular, those that choose the Salesforce space. Obviously, we've got a lot of real world experience with over 70% of our employees being veterans. We want to share those stories and let people understand how they went about translating those skills or how they went about justifying that time out of civilian world, if you will. As you came here on your fellowship and you transitioned into your new role,
Yeah, the number one thing is always be collaborative and be honest. So like for me, when I was transitioning and I was talking to people in the ecosystem, when somebody would say a term that I didn't know, I would just stop them. And as long as it's not a meeting where we're like trying to achieve something within 15 minutes, I would just stop them and be like, hey, what does that mean? Because you don't know what you don't know. And if you try to fake it, eventually people are just going to see that. So like I have grace within this first 6 months is what I kind of figured. And don't do it in front of clients, but offline with my technical lead or whoever I'm talking to at that time, just be like, hey, what did this mean? Or what did that mean? I'm unfamiliar with this, because that honesty gets you a lot farther. And I'm a big believer in don't make the same mistake twice. So if I didn't understand something, the next time I'm going to know what that means because we've already discussed it and we've had that honest conversation about it. So yeah, that would be like the number one thing I would say as far as the translating portion. Just stop people and ask them, hey, what does that mean? I'm new. Be honest about it. Just like if you're coming to me to go play Army for a weekend, I wouldn't be like, hey, Greg, go get the SSA and translate it to the 1680. You'd be like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Or what the heck are you talking about, man? Right. So like, I wouldn't expect you to come in day one, and that's part of company culture too. Is that acceptable? And you have to be able to find a company where that is acceptable in the beginning. And as you skill up, just be honest with that and ask for help or ask for, hey, what does this mean? And obviously being consultant, we're the experts, so I never did that in front of the client and just stop a meeting and be like, hey guys, let's talk about this. What does this mean? But it's something that you just take in your notes and you put down afterwards for a conversation. Because like, to tell you a story a little bit about that is I realized that when I was getting out and I was interviewing with Maersk, a shipping company, I was trying to translate my resume into the civilian side and talking about my rank and talking about like what that meant. And the guy that I was interviewing with was a great guy, no doubt, but he had no idea about the military. So when I was interviewing him and talking about rank structure and what that meant for responsibility, he's like, oh, I thought sergeant was the highest rank because I watched Stripes, and like that was his perspective of the military. Right. So like you have to understand that it is your job to kind of come in and translate that. No, this is what I was doing as a platoon leader. This is what a platoon leader does, and be able to translate that down to the civilian side. And at the same time, learn the terminology of that sector and then be able to skill up in that. So it's very important that you just have to be a good communicator throughout and just be honest about what you know, what you don't know, and you'll slowly build up those skills over time. So like when I think about the 6 to 12 months where I was first a fellow for about 5 months with your pod and then moving to a brand new pod, there's kind of a point in there where I was talking with the COO, Tim Harding, and he kind of asked me, okay, do you want to stay with Delta or move to Echo, or do you want to stand up a brand new pod? And me being the person I am, I love the chaos and I love just trying to have to figure things out. I'm like, no, I want to go to the brand new pod with this brand new big client because I want to be able to just figure it out. I don't want to, although I had a great time with you guys in Delta and I would have loved to stay as well, I wanted the challenge of standing up something new and being a part of something new. So that kind of goes hand in hand with like, as I'm going to be long-winded here. Sorry, Greg, but also talking about, taking responsibility outside of your job description. As an officer or in the military, it's very narrow in what you do. My job is as a logistics PL is to make sure my company has fuel, water, ammunition, right? So your job description is very narrow. You have to be okay with going outside of that job description or being a Swiss Army knife, right? That's what I enjoyed doing personally as well as professionally, is saying, okay, yeah, I'm an associate consultant or I'm a consultant or even maybe just a fellow, but how can I plug gaps that I can see are present here? How can I mold myself to fit what they need at the time? So I see that being increasingly more important as, the professional development and our market is changing every single day. You have to be able to mold yourself into what's needed at the time, not just what you're familiar with. So that's why I always say accept the responsibilities that are outside of your job description, because those things are needed and somebody's going to do them. So why not you?
You bring up a great point. You think about the endless number of skills that one might learn in the military, and trying to find a civilian counterpart to that skill is probably something that no one would finish that crossword puzzle, right? It's a long list.
Right.
But the nature of the versatility that you must have to survive missions, right? Missions are not a formula, right? It's not A plus B equals C. It's we're going to go here, we're going to do this, goes as planned. Right. Everything's not the EM50 project from Stripes, right? So, but the nature of being okay with the unknown fits very well into the Salesforce ecosystem. As you mentioned, no one knows all things Salesforce, not even Salesforce, right? It's a really big company. It's a fast moving company. It's tech, right? By nature, you're somewhat of a passenger on the train of going where the industry takes it and what the economy does and who the leadership are and who the clients are. Salesforce is really good at following what their customers want to do, not just making new things up that they think the world needs. But outside of general or specific skills that one might know and want to translate over, the general chaos that you mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, when Foxtrot was stood up, it was made almost entirely of veterans. So there was a bunch of guys on that pod that were just kind of that do whatever it takes kind of stuff. And y'all did not get the easiest stuff thrown at you in the beginning. And I'm kind of like you. My start wasn't indifferent in that I was inside a company. I wasn't, but I found myself in this place where there were more acronyms coming at me than I could begin. I thought my hearing was going like, why don't y'all use full words anymore?
Right.
It was just constant chaos. But it's an elephant you eat one bite at a time, right? That you just break this thing down into what I got to do this week, to what I got to do today, to what do I got to do next.
Exactly.
If you do those things right, you do it with support of good leadership, and you do it through collaboration, as you said, with good teammates. I think that carries you a long way. It's I think I've said this before, but I have a tremendous passion for both the military and civil servants. My best friend was a police officer killed in the line of duty. That whole "I got your six" thing. There's something to be said. And I don't know that we necessarily see that a lot in the civilian world. I mean, I see it here at Sirius all the time. But if it's your job to do something, I don't have to come check on you about that, right? Your job is your job, and you get it done. That's part of collaborating and carrying your weight. But I got to think, as you were moving from military into a career and you look around, and A, you see a lot of military people. B, you see this discipline of, A, they're open with the reservist thing, but also that when it comes down to getting things done and how you respond when things don't go right, you had a lot of confidence doing that. Not that you were arrogant or I've done this before, but I've done this kind of thing before. And that's something I think veterans should very much walk away with if they consider Salesforce as a career in consulting or not, right? It's uncharted territory. It is a constant moving target. And as long as you're okay with that and you like the challenge of that, it's a really interesting place to work.
100%. Yeah. As my dad would say, it's just a little bit of grit. Goes a long way. That's what it ends up being. The willingness to put yourself out there is very important, and being comfortable being uncomfortable, because the more elaborate plans you make as far as implementation timelines and stuff, nothing survives first contact. So it's always going to change, and there's always going to be that chaos. It's just, how do you manage it and how do you react to it? That's what's within your control. And it was the same thing with my transition timeline.
This is a little out of order, I guess, but thinking back to your fellowship, when I got here, I think I'd been here about a month when the first fellow came to work on my team. I want to say you were the fourth or fifth fellow I had come through, but like every quarter we had a new round of fellows come in. And not every engagement managers typically at Sirius would be the group that would kind of manage the fellow, if you will. And then I told you, I think probably the first week you were here, that in about 5 or 6 weeks, I'm going to call you and say, Ryan, tomorrow's the day. I want you to tell me who you want to become when you grow up.
Right.
And the idea was I wanted to make sure we're getting them as much value to you as possible. I'm guessing there are people out there who don't know what a fellowship is. That's definitely not a military term. But a fellowship, and it's different in different programs, but like through Hiring Our Heroes specifically, it's 12 weeks where you come in. You effectively are getting paid by the military because you're still enlisted or you're still serving, but you're working, in our case, for free. But the training that we give you in that time is invaluable if you're serious about going into this space. And of all the fellows that I had, and as many times as I asked that question, there's a natural evolution from associate consultant to possibly a senior, maybe over to dev if that's the route you want to go. No one before or since has pulled a Ryan. And I said, Ryan, today's the day, man. Who do you want to become? And with not a thought in your head, I don't think, and no hesitation at all, you said leadership.
Right.
And you were completely serious about that, but I'll look up in our HR program just to see what your official title was, because I know your role recently changed to a new position. Leadership's right there next to your name.
Yeah.
So if you can, I mean, I know it's been 2.5 years. I know you've been in here just wide open. But if you could kind of summarize, I don't think you showed up day one like this. Leadership's this thing that's defined and it's out there, and here's the 12 steps I got to take to get to it. But no doubt you set off on a mission, because I know you didn't just go on site early. You went on site alone early.
Yeah.
Which is, just not something people commonly do in Salesforce, but certainly as a consultant, like you're like one of the youngest guys on the team in terms of experience, and you're there by yourself. So, again, I want to validate that those things you learn in the military, those skills you've got, the situational awareness and transparency that you operate with. You've told some of this, but give me a little background on what you remember from that journey. Any specific milestones that you found yourself in as like, man, this is an opportunity to really prove myself out. Like, not a mission for to heck with everybody, let's promote Ryan, but doing what you do is what got you where you are. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a little bit about that is it's kind of like, when you're in college at 18 years old saying, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? You're like, I don't freaking know. That's how it was when I first got to the company, right? Of like, hey, what route do you want to go? These are the different options. Well, I haven't experienced any of them yet, so I can't definitively say where I want to go. And also, it was at that point, I was burnt out from being in leadership in the military. And I was like, hey, I just want to go technical. I don't want to deal with any of the people problems because I've been dealing with that for 5 years. Maybe I want to go leadership, but I just want to go the technical route and be a technical expert, and that's it. But what I slowly realized over time, and as I got more technical and as I got involved more with the company, is you always either have two options. You can be part of a problem or you can be part of a solution. And when you're in leadership, you get more control or opportunity on what that solution looks like. So I'm the sort of person where I can't just sit on my hands. If I see something wrong, I just am going to fix it no matter what position I'm in. And that kind of goes back to, accepting the responsibility outside of your job description, where if something's running inefficiently or just running wrong, I'm going to say something as either the associate or as a leadership position, but you do get more control formally of how things look in a leadership position. So what I realized over time is as I got more and more involved, I was like, okay, I just can't take a step away and like not be involved in the overall process because I just physically can't do that as a person. And that's when we were having those discussions. I knew, okay, I'm not as burnt out from people anymore. I'm ready to be involved at that next level. And I knew leadership was going to be the route for me because I just can't sit on my hands and watch things from a distance. That's just not the sort of person I am. And kind of over time, I also learned as I got more and more technical and learned the skill set is that I do love like developing and being able to build solutions that work for our clients. But the part that I liked most was just organizing the chaos. And that's in a soft way and a hard way of organizing the chaos technically in their org, but also just trying to help them figure out their business process and what are the deliverables we're driving towards and working with them, on site for 14 hours a day. That is what I truly enjoyed, was figuring those things out and putting together a plan where they're at the same level we are and we understand each other and we have a way forward. And that's what I really enjoyed. And I kind of learned that as I went more the development route, working with Gavin, because Tim will be the first one to tell you, like when I was first here, I knew I wanted to go leadership, but I was all over the place. I was like, I want to go technical and then I want to go custom dev, learned what custom dev was. And I was like, okay, now I want to go back to leadership because I enjoy being in front of the computer, but I don't want to code for 12 hours a day and then present that as a solution to somebody. I want to be there like in the front lines, I guess you could so to speak, of business and like figuring things out with clients. That's where I derive, a sense of, what would they say, a sense of purpose in that organization. So yeah, that was kind of
there's something about Salesforce projects that momentum's not the right word, but even where I came from, where I was a product owner for about 11 years, you're always in project mode, right? There's this concept of something starts and you figure it out and you work on it and you know the people and you move forward. And I got to think it's not indifferent from the kind of feelings you would get from doing a mission, that there's orders, there's understanding what's required, there's executing it. There's a retrospective on the back end of what do we do wrong, what do we do right, how do we do it better, and rinse and repeat, right? So in the Salesforce space, whether you're a consultant or whether you're just a product owner, a consultant, an admin in a company, that concept of challenge, the concept of learning, the concept of meeting and helping people and succeeding on the mission, if you will, translates very well. And I think, to your point, leaders do what leaders do, and that's they lead. Like, you just don't have the ability to sit back and watch chaos and not. You've got it within you to make an impact, and you certainly have.
Exactly.
Man, I appreciate the time with you. I think after all the years of conversations, like, it's always cool to sit down and still learn more new things about you. Being another Georgia boy, we still got to get together. You keep talking about fishing, and we've not got connected yet, but that's got to happen.
I know.
So,
yeah, 100%.
Look, man, that's all I got time for today. We're going to have to do this again, but I always want to close this thing by giving you a chance just to speak out to the community. There's a veteran out there that comes across this, and they're facing the unknown challenges of going from the guarded structure of military life. And I don't mean any pacifying simplicity of that, but as they change that chapter to looking towards civilian life, and they face what seems like endless ideas or options to choose from, if they're entertaining the idea of Salesforce, is there anything you want to share to encourage that community?
Yeah, 100%. Just reach out for help. That is the number one thing I tell all veterans. Reach out for help. You can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, reach out to somebody at Sirius. There's so many resources out there to help you in this transition process, but being able to raise your hand, and the only part of it that you have to initiate is just that first step. Reach out to somebody, and people want to help you because it's a community and people have helped me. So whether that's Veterati, LinkedIn, or whatever other platforms that come out into existence soon, you just need to reach out, know where you want to go, and people will help you along the way. It's not this thing where I'm competing against you, so I'm not going to help you. No, it's this thing where I was elevated by others, so I want to be able to give it back and pay it forward. So just reach out to those people, ask your questions, and then finally just make a decision. Eventually, you're going to have to pull the trigger and take a chance. Take that chance, but always have backups in place in case things don't work out, and just do it. It's daunting, but like I said, just break it down day by day, task by task, and you'll get there quicker than you realize. Like I said, it's been 2.5 years for me. Feels like I was talking to you yesterday about being a fellow, right? So time flies by, and it's going to happen fast and quick, but just stick to your plan and be flexible as it changes. That's all.
They couldn't say it better, man. On that note, in the show notes for this, I'll put my LinkedIn profile as well as Ryan's. If you want to reach out, make a connection, ask some questions, feel free to do that. There's nothing we love more than having an opportunity to do something for our veteran community. So, Ryan, thanks so much for your time today, man. Really appreciate what you do here and what you've done for our country. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
And that concludes today's episode of Serious Talk, the Military Minute. On behalf of Sirius Solutions, we would like to extend our sincere appreciation to the entire veteran and military spouse community for your unwavering commitment and sacrifice. Remember, your military experience has equipped you with exceptional skills that the Salesforce ecosystem needs. Join us next time as we continue to explore pathways to success in the Salesforce space. If you know a veteran on the verge of separating from the military, or a military spouse considering Salesforce as a career, please share this episode with them. If you enjoyed the material, please give us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe on YouTube so that you can be alerted to new content. We greatly appreciate all of your support. Please see the show notes for links to learn more about Sirius Solutions and other programs discussed in this episode. I want to extend a special thanks to Jason Fowler for allowing use of his song, Mystery Road. Until next time, this is Greg Banks signing off.